Okay, so what we are going to talk about right now is doing the underpainting and just kind of review a few things as we go into full color because I made these new little diagrams and I thought that might be helpful. Hopefully you've watched the other PowerPoints and you understand a little bit about the way I'm addressing color in the class. Over here on the left, what I have is more of a theoretical color wheel, and for people that really get like heavily involved in this idea of color mixing and so on, these theoretical wheels have some holes in them, but for the most part, this is the way that we understand color at this point. So we've got primary colors are on these darker colors, darker lines right here, yellow, red, and blue. Then we've got the secondary colors midway in between, green, violet, and orange. And then we have the tertiary colors. What I've done is I've added in these diamonds of colors to kind of remind you of what the color family is. And part of the reason I did that was really more for this diagram right here. So if you remember, I've talked a lot about color families, and when I'm referring to color families, I wanted something that was a little bit more clear for you guys to understand. When different pigments on the color wheel here are placed, I place them according to their color family and where they reside in that color family, if they're more to the warmer end of the spectrum or the cooler end of the spectrum within their color family. If they start to mix with another color, like they're a blend of like yellow and green or yellow and orange instead of just straight in the middle of that color family. And so where this understanding of color families becomes really important is when we start looking at desaturated colors, because this is where we all get a little bit lost, it seems like. It's pretty clear when you're in these bright colors what color family you're in. But as we come into like umbers, blacks, even these colors like burnt sienna, raw sienna, yellow ochre, sometimes it might not be so apparent. So the nice thing about setting up these color families and placing them is you kind of get more of an idea of what we're talking about. Burnt sienna is here on the the orange-red spectrum. Okay, so it's right here in the orange-red spectrum. It's less saturated than cadmium red light, okay, but it's in that same spectrum as cadmium red light. Burnt umber is solidly within the orange spectrum. So it's a very desaturated version of orange, and it's a dark value desaturation. Okay, whereas another color like Naples yellow might be more here in the yellow orange spectrum, but it's a very light value, but it's also very desaturated, depending obviously on the Naples yellow. So hopefully this kind of makes it a little bit more clear. I've got raw umber kind of over here. It's in the yellow family, but it's towards the green side. So raw umber is very desaturated dark value, but it's in the yellow-green part of the family. So hopefully this kind of explains some of that color family information a little bit better for you. I also wanted to show you the underpainting, and like an idiot, I thought I had it all set up and I thought I was doing a great job of videotaping it, and I got to the end and realized I never pushed play. So here's the finished version of it, but essentially, actually I shouldn't have gotten rid of all these diagrams yet because one of them is kind of helpful. This one right here. So essentially the colors that we're using for this underpainting to get this dark value and then the tone is done with just burnt umber, which is in our orange family right here. Okay, and so we just lightly tone the whole canvas. Because I put the drawing on after the tone, mine's a little bit different, but you guys would probably do your drawing first, then tone the whole canvas with a little bit of oil and your burnt umber, and really thin it down. Okay, you want it pretty thin. And then to mix this dark value in here, what I did is I didn't use black. I actually used a mixture of an orange and a blue, ultramarine blue, which is a cooler blue, but ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And if you remember your color theory, when we talk about orange and blue, they're complements of each other. So when we mix them together, what they do is they neutralize each other even more if we mix them in the proper proportions. And I kind of showed that right here because once I realized that I had forgotten to start video, I was like, well, was there anything I really need to make sure that they can see the mixture of? So I did do this video right here. And I wish I could get rid of that color bar. Maybe it'll go away in a minute. But as you look at this, I'm showing just finishing up because I was like, what could I do? And then I was, so now that I've started this late and I've already blocked in all the shadows, and we'll go back to talking about that in a minute. But you notice this is a very thin down mixture. It's got a little bit of oil in it. The umber will still make this dry quickly. It'll be dry in a day or two at the most. Um, but this mixture here, you can see some places it's a little bit browner, some it's a little bit cooler. And this is kind of my mixture right here that we're looking at. What I did is I took some of the ultramarine blue, and this is the same blue that you guys have, and then I mixed a little bit of the burnt umber, and that's what this is the burnt umber. And then as I mix those two colors together, they neutralize into a dark. And it'll be a cooler dark if it has a little bit more blue in it, and it'll be a warmer dark if it has a little bit more brown. Whether or not it's dark doesn't probably make, I mean, whether or not it's cool or warm probably isn't going to make that much of a difference to you. But essentially what I'm doing is I'm using, let's get rid of this again, I'm using that dark tone to come up with a really nice dark that I can block in all the shadows here. So remember that what we want to do is we want to block in the shadows all over the painting. We want to kind of figure out where those are. And the photo that I picked is actually not a very, it doesn't have a lot of shadow in it. This is the photo right here that I'm going to work from for this project. It was a larger photo. And so if we go back to your instructions for the project, you can take any of those photos out of the folder that you have the link for, and pick one of the photos out, and then you don't have to paint the whole photo. In fact, usually I wouldn't want you to paint the whole photo. Usually the whole photo has way too much going on in it. So this photo is actually, it's a lot larger. Let me see if this will go back or not. Yeah, so this was my full photo originally right here. Has a lot going on. It's not necessarily a good composition. When I shot these photos, I just was trying to get a bunch of photos for teaching, and I wasn't really worrying about whether or not I had great compositions other than just making sure that part of it at least was usable. So what I did was I cropped out this area, and this is the area I want to use as my painting. Now, if you remember in the PowerPoint, we looked a little bit at some of the compositions and what we might do. Let me kind of get rid of some of this gray area on here so you guys can see it better. And so what I decided to do is you can take parts of your painting and simplify them, darken them, whatever you want to do. Well, I kind of liked this drop shadow here and the light here. I don't need this strip here, so I'm not going to worry about that. I'm going to let this be like a light wall in the background here. And then I'm going to keep this shadow and this little bit of drapery. This is just a bunch of clumsiness that's kind of mucking up that little edge. So I'm going to let this all just go back into shadows back here and let my drapery kind of gently emerge out of those shadows. So what you see over here is I've gone through, I've figured out where shadow is on all of my objects, and I've tried to put that shadow in, but because this is lit mostly from a front source and it's not so much from the side from this angle of photo, I don't have as many strong like 3/4 shadows on it, but still I try to block in these shadows where I had them. And then what I did is on the background I blocked in this shadow, that's the drop shadow from the drapery. I'm leaving this bit of drapery, this is in the light, this little bit is coming in the light, these all kind of drop into the shadows. And as I paint this, I'm going to let a lot of this kind of disappear into deeper shadow and just gently emerge it where I want to. And I decided this is all going into shadow because this is really what my composition is about. And I do like this balancing portion here of what the background does, so I wanted to keep that, but this is really what this is about. I'm looking forward to painting this blue bottle and the yellow bananas and all these yellows and greens and stuff in here. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. So first step is do your drawing on your canvas. Second step is going to be blocking in a light burnt umber tone throughout the entire canvas to make it all one even tone. Mine's on sketch paper, I mean canvas paper, so I didn't go to the edge, but you should go all the way to the edge. Okay, then after you've blocked in that tone, you should still be able to see your drawing. I want you to go through and mass out all of your shadows with the tone that you've mixed between the burnt umber and the ultramarine blue. okay? And you're going to mix those two together. When you set up your palette, what I recommend that you do is that you've already seen the PowerPoint for the color and so on with this. So what I recommend you do is as you're setting up your palette, lay all your warm colors on one side and then do the cool versions of all those colors on the other side. So maybe you've got your warm red, your warm yellow, your warm blue, and then right next to that strip, do your cool red, your cool yellow, and your cool blue. I haven't set up my palette yet, but I will be setting it up before I do the demo tonight. I'll make sure and take a picture, and I'll include that in the final video for this painting.